reaction to the Reserve Bank's preservation order against former Steinhoff CEO Markus Jooste, the Western Cape High Court has approved the central bank's application to attach his assets belonging, or rather valued, at around 1.4 billion rand, and Steinhoff having imploded in 2017 under Jooste's watch. We speak to affected party by the Steinhoff saga. That's businessman Christo Wiese. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Wiese. First of all, you have lauded the latest developments and you've described it as a very hurtful move against Jooste, which is the first. Talk to us about this particular reaction that you've had.
Well, the point is, many people, including Jooste, thought that there would be no serious consequences for what had been done to many people in South Africa and abroad. And this just shows that although the wheels turn slowly, they do turn.
On that latter statement, Dr. Wiese, the wheels of justice, albeit turning slowly, they are at this particular point, and there's also talk in reaction of criminal charges that should be laid against Markus Jooste directly. What are your thoughts on that particular element?
Well, the criminal charges have been laid by several people. I personally have laid 3 criminal charges against Jooste already 4 or 5 years ago. And other people that I'm aware of have also laid criminal charges. So the charges have been laid. And, the process is now beginning to gain traction.
I also see that the Landsrijk wine estate has been noted in the Reserve Bank's seizure against Markus Jooste. In August, you were quoted saying you want it back. What's the status there?
Well, the status is we sued Jooste for the return of the Landsrijk already in 2018. But, of course, we had to wait for all the processes to take their course, because the important thing is that it has to be proven, although we all sort of know it, but it has to be proven that Jooste committed fraud for that matter to succeed. And hopefully this action by the Reserve Bank will be helpful in that regard.
Dr. Wiese, we're seeing the South African Reserve Bank act in this regard, but we are also, as you alluded a short while ago, waiting for the likes of the National Prosecuting Authority to get its hands on this matter. What's to be said about the role of Parliament, especially as Markus Jooste was in Parliament, but again did not answer too much to his transgressions and was allowed to leave?
Yeah, with the greatest of respect to Misang, Parliament is not really equipped to get to the bottom of this massive fraud. That should be left to the proper authorities, and the proper authorities are our National Prosecuting Authority, which is criticized by many people for the delay in arresting and bringing Jooste to court. But I'm always at pains to point out to people that even the mighty German prosecuting authorities have taken years to prosecute this fraud properly.
As a parting shot, Dr. Wiese, how do you respond to analysts who have said that the board at the time must have known that something was amiss, especially because Markus Jooste was not acting in a period of 2 years. This spans a very long time and almost a decade of underhanded dealings. How then would you respond to those accusations and criticism?
Well, I've responded to it very often by pointing out, first of all, there are strong indications that this fraud had been committed over a period of a decade and a half. What must always be borne in mind, that during that decade and a half, the perpetrators of the fraud managed to hoodwink the internal auditors, the external auditors, all the regulators, all the banks that lent the company tens of billions of rand, both local and overseas, all the ratings agencies, all or just about all the financial analysts. So really, people are ascribing, in a sense, some superhuman powers to a board. I've said it before, that if a CEO is a crook in a company as complicated, as widespread as Steinhoff was, I mean, it would have to be a really super board where the other professionals could not detect anything. If they would now suddenly say, oh no, but we can't trust Deloitte, the biggest audit firm in the world probably, who are doing the audit. Oh, but we can't trust the regulators who are looking at everything. But we can't trust the ratings agencies. So we've got to actually look at it ourselves. That is really expecting, I think, some superhuman input from a board. And may I add this, and I've said that before, the board members of Steinhoff over the years were some of the most eminent business people in South Africa. And its audit committee consisted of 3 people who were not only qualified auditors, they held doctorates in auditing. That just tells you how clever the perpetrators were.
As a parting shot, would you still describe this as the biggest mistake by a country mile, as you've been quoted previously?
Absolutely. My biggest mistake by a country mile was trusting Jooste based on his apparent track record.
Thank you so much.
But I built all my businesses by trusting people. So he was the wrong choice.
Thank you so much for your input. Businessman Dr. Christo Wiese talking to us about that reaction to Markus Jooste's assets being seized by the Reserve Bank for the Steinhoff fraud.